Good morning. As we draw towards the end of this section in our Bible readings about understanding creation and our place in it, we come now to a reading from the letter to the Hebrews. This is the beginning of that letter. It's Hebrews chapter 1, verses 1 to 4. Long ago, in many places and in different ways, God spoke to our ancestors by the prophets. But in these recent times, he has spoken to us in a Son. He chose the Son to inherit everything. Yes, through the Son, he created the ages. The Son is the radiance of God's glory, and he bears the imprint of God's reality. He sustains everything by the word of his power. Once he had made a cleansing of sins, he took his seat to the right of the exalted majesty, having become so much better than the angels, as the name he inherited is more excellent than theirs. This little teaching pamphlet, which we call the letter to the Hebrews, comes remarkably early in church history, and it is quoted by Clement of Alexandria around 95 AD. It is another example of how sophisticated Christian teaching had become in just a few decades since the founding events of our faith. Do not believe those who try to tell you that Jesus was not called God until the time of Emperor Constantine, who flourished between 306 and 337 AD. They are wrong. And here, once again, is the evidence to prove it. No one actually knows who wrote this pamphlet or to whom exactly it was originally addressed. It looks like a lecture or a written out sermon, although it ends like a letter. So what did its writer believe about Jesus? Well, first, that God had been trying to communicate with humans all along, but the prophets had only limited success. Now, he says, or she says, in recent times, verbal communication has been enhanced. Communication has now taken place in a Son, reminding us of St. John, who called Jesus the Word. Jesus, the Son of God, was God's sole heir, inheriting the power to create the ages, and therefore everything that the ages contain. Two simple statements affirm the writer's belief in Christ's divinity and his relationship with the Father. First, the Son is the radiance of God's glory, and he bears the imprint of God's reality. And then secondly, there is this link with the gospel narrative, which is like St. Luke's expression of the events that have occurred so recently. Once he had made a cleansing of sins, he took his seat to the right of the exalted majesty. This is the same Jesus we read about in the Gospels, the one who is our advocate with the Father, although this letter to the Hebrews was probably written before any of the Gospels were written. The roots of our faith go very deep, and acute minds were at work very soon after the events that founded our faith. This interpretation is obviously aimed at Jews or former Jews to place Jesus in their faith history. Now we are left with the task of placing him in ours. Tomorrow will be the last of our examples of nature being described by these very early Christian writers as the work of God's hands. Once again, it will be a quotation from the letter to the Hebrews. And then after tomorrow, we'll be starting an exploration of the interesting ancient sagas we find in the Old Testament, starting with revelations about our ancestor in the faith, Abraham. See you tomorrow.